I knew you were going to be angry. You said no,
Mm-hmm.
and I risked it anyway.
You know, as an anxious person, how you can make it right
Yes.
so that you can ultimately get away with it.
Yes. This is the ultimate guilt trip when you're giving and giving and giving.
So there is an
it's like,
expectation.
yes, of course there's an expectation. There's always an expectation. You have this ideal image. When you fall in love, this person is everything you want them to be. It puts that into question. So the way it works is like we know we can get away with it and we know how to sell it. When you're with someone who's always afraid of commitment, then it's safe for you to want commitment.
There is a greater cause or reason of some kind to override that boundary.
Yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
No.
Do anxious people take advantage of that?
Mm-hmm.
Hey guys, welcome to our second podcast episode. Last time, Karolina, anxiously attached, formally confronted me, formally an avoidant attachment style. And so this time, to keep things fair, we're going to flip it around, and I am going to confront an anxious person about their attachment styles. So you're in the hot seat today.
Yay.
So I'm going to start by asking you, for our viewers that may not know, what is an anxious attachment style?
People who have an anxious attachment style are afraid of being abandoned. And we also have the tendency to doubt ourselves. And because of this, we tend to overthink, get anxious, and act very clingy.
I would know.
Yeah. We need a lot of reassurance, basically. And we also like closeness a lot. In a way, anxious attachment is the opposite of avoidant attachment. It's like the perfect opposite puzzle piece. And that's why I think anxious people often choose avoidant partners.
Yes. Let's talk a bit more about that, because I think that's actually something we frequently see with the clients we speak to, that the dynamic is often an anxious person choosing an avoidant partner. Why are you smiling like that?
Well, avoidants choose anxious people too.
Okay, fair enough. So they choose each other.
Yes.
Why? Or let's say, why does the anxious one feel
Choose an
so
avoidant.
drawn to an avoidant?
Uh-huh.
Yes.
Uh-huh. I think it's the challenge.
Mhm.
It feels interesting. It's like, can I get this person to drop their guard down? It feels difficult, and I think that's also what makes it interesting. And I think there's also a second layer to it. It's safe
Mhm.
because it's not that anxious people aren't afraid of commitment, but when you're with someone who's always afraid of commitment, then it's safe for you to want commitment because you anyway know that you're most likely not going to get it.
Mhm.
So it's not there.
So they both play opposing roles. The avoidant is the commitment phobe
Yeah.
who is running away.
Yeah.
The anxious person is the one chasing, looking for commitment,
Yeah.
but only feels comfortable doing so actively because the avoidant is withdrawing, being dismissive, and rejecting.
I think yes, to whatever degree. If the avoidant was equally on the same page and okay, let's make it happen, it would be scarier in
Mhm.
some ways. I think chasing an avoidant is also a way of procrastinating or keeping things light
Mhm.
when you are not ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if
Or when you're unsure.
an anxious person was in a relationship with another anxious person, or let's say with an avoidant whose attachment style theoretically switched to
Yeah.
anxious,
Yeah.
and they were both anxious together,
Yeah.
would you say that would be harder to work because the anxious person would no longer have someone to chase?
I think so. I think so. I think the anxious person would then become more avoidant, could become more avoidant.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like you need the dynamic, the matching dynamic
Right, right.
for it to work. And of course, like there's the surface level and the little chasing.
Mm.
Ultimately, what I see is that some people are more avoidant deep down and other people are more anxious deep down. And I think this never changes.
Mm-hmm.
But on the surface level, if the anxious person, if let's say I would start having doubts, I think you'd become more chasing. And you see that with the whole anxious avoidant trap when our clients, that when our clients become more reserved, when they become more
Yes.
unsure, when they're like, well, I don't know, this isn't good enough for me,
Yeah. The
or
anxious
like this is
clients.
not the anxious clients, where the anxious clients say like this is a boundary for me, it's like I will not stand for this.
Mm-hmm.
When there's threat of the anxious person actually leaving, avoidants do become more attentive and they do put in more effort. So
Mm.
they do, I wouldn't say chase necessarily,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
The power
yeah,
dynamic switches a bit.
yeah, yeah.
So when you and I first started dating, right, it was very a very different dynamic than we have today. I
Yeah,
think this anxious and avoidant thing
yeah,
was a whole lot stronger.
yeah, for sure.
And yeah, and I experienced you as being a lot more clingy, needy. I felt very smothered
So judgmental.
at times. So where where does that come from for anxious people? Why are they so hyper focused sometimes on their partner?
Well, because
So the,
avoidants always stay distant. So it's like you want to cling because
but,
you're always anxious.
but anxious people aren't they like that regardless?
I think it gets triggered. They
Hmm.
are like that regardless, but it gets triggered
Hmm.
because I wouldn't in all with all my friends, for example, I don't think I was ever anxious. I had quite a big social life and would keep busy and best friends, and if my best friend would say, "Hey, I'm busy, I don't want to see you," whatever, I wouldn't care.
But if I did that,
But if you did that, I'd, yeah, I'd feel like something's wrong. He doesn't like me anymore. So I think it actually comes from this insecurity
hmm,
deep down that there is something wrong with me, or that I'm unlovable, or that I deserve to be abandoned, or I'm doomed to be abandoned
and alone
and
to live
alone.
with cats
Yes.
by yourself.
And I'm allergic to cats. So
So, what makes it different with friendships and romantic contexts? Why is it such a different
I don't think
reaction?
it's necessarily so different. I
Hmm.
just don't think I was friends with avoidance.
Okay, so you date avoidance, not befriend
Befriend.
avoidance. Okay. Because from an avoidance standpoint, the being so smothered or like having so much attention,
Mm,
this is a component where they will often at some point at least back off a little bit and say I need space, or like I did with us too, right? Like
yeah,
if it was too intense, I
yeah.
would say maybe not, sometimes communicate it more, but sometimes just take a week off or something.
Hmm, hmm.
um I didn't know how to communicate that to you in a way that made
Wouldn't
sense.
trigger me.
I mean, I didn't know. Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That wouldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So you
like,
just stop replying,
well,
or
I
you
think
just say, "I don't want to hang out."
yeah, but I
Yeah.
mean, I wasn't too terrible with my replies, was I? I don't quite remember.
It'd sometimes take a day,
Yeah.
and I'd be like, "Okay,
Okay.
whatever. He's
Well,
being boring right now."
I get like, there's something I need to ask,
Uh huh.
because this whole taking time off
Mm-hmm.
as an avoidant, right?
Yeah.
Like, why
Yeah.
do they do it the way they do it? And I think what it often felt like was that I could say no, or I
Mm-hmm.
could say I needed space, or I could say,
Mm-hmm.
or in some way, shape, or form indicate
Mm-hmm.
that it's too intense. I think the
Mm-hmm.
avoid like we feel the intensity a lot and then
Mm-hmm.
back off.
Mm-hmm.
But it would feel like I could try convey that, but you didn't get it.
Or I'd
Or
take it as an offense, I guess, as though I did
yes,
something wrong, or it
yeah,
wouldn't just be like, oh, he needs space.
yeah.
Yeah, it would be
But
like,
then you'd scramble to fix it.
I would try to convince you because I wanted more closeness than you were wanting. I think
Yeah,
that was the problem, or that is the problem often
yes,
with anxious people and avoidance. Is anxious people are more ready to connect,
yeah,
and they're also more ready to just become part of your life and stuff.
yeah.
And avoidants are the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So there's a different pacing, right?
yes, yeah,
Avoidance
yeah.
moves slower, anxious people move
Or
faster.
avoidants have more regard for their limits. I do find that
Yeah.
anxious people will jump into things, and it can also become too intense.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't even notice it.
Mm-hmm.
I did actually have that with friends a lot.
Mm-hmm.
That I would like have a best friend and we'd hang and hang and hang and talk and do everything together, and I'd get so sick of them.
Mm-hmm. But you
After
wouldn't realize
I
it.
wouldn't realize it. I only realized it after,
Mm-hmm.
once we were separate.
So the intensity catches up with you
Yes,
later.
I think there's less awareness of the
Mm-hmm.
intensity.
So avoidance might feel it sooner,
Yeah,
try take space. The
yeah,
anxious person tries closing the gap because it
because they
gives
feel like
something,
they did something wrong.
right? Yeah. And this was I think part of my struggle
Uh-huh.
with us initially,
Mm,
that I would try and have some kind of barrier there,
mm-hmm.
or buffer
Yeah,
or something,
yeah,
and you trying to cross that
yeah.
or close it would only intensify that feeling of like,
Needing the
I
buffer.
need this space, I need this. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So the anxious people, like, this is the anxious avoidant trap, right?
yeah,
Where they just cycle,
yeah.
and one person is trying to regulate and step back while the other becomes anxious and tries to
Mm-hmm.
fix, and
Mm-hmm.
on it goes. And it can lead to breakups,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I think with us, that definitely was a factor in it.
Mm-hmm.
What I'd like to talk about next is boundaries, which
Mm-hmm.
connects to the previous topic,
Mm-hmm.
because anxious people feel like it's justified to override them, right? That when an avoidant says, I can't, I need space, or whatever it might be,
Mm-hmm.
there is a greater cause or reason of some
Yeah,
kind to override that boundary.
yeah.
Can you tell me more about
No.
that? Well, I'm going to override your boundary
Because
and insist that you tell me anyway.
there's nothing more to say. It's justified. It's justified, you
It's
know?
justified.
Yeah.
So what justifies it?
Uh, it's it's desperation.
Mm-hmm.
It's like purely an emotional reaction
Mm-hmm.
and desperation, and it just takes over. It's a bit like when you're sitting at a party and having a drink, and then you're like, "We next," and you know you shouldn't be having this drink. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the same way when this gets triggered, when it gets activated, the overriding, the anxious clinginess.
Mm-hmm.
You know you shouldn't be doing it,
Mm-hmm. You know, it's
but you
bad.
do it. You know it's bad,
Mm-hmm.
and still you do it.
So even if you understand that it's may not get you the results you want,
Yes, yes,
so it's that strong of a
yeah,
feeling.
yeah, yeah.
So what is that?
Desperation,
Desperation.
fear,
Yeah.
I guess, and just desperation for getting like you can't accept
Mm-hmm.
the truth. You don't want the truth, or like you don't want this, whatever it is. Much like with our breakups, you just don't want
Yeah.
something to be true,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll do anything to deny it. It's a bit like a kid throwing a tantrum
Mm-hmm.
and just crying and protesting because they still hope to get what they want, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
So
yeah,
it's protest behavior around the partner, often an avoidant withdrawing.
I guess when an avoidant is denying something,
Mhm.
when it's like, I'm not willing to give you that, or I'm not willing to provide this.
Right. So that desperation comes up, avoidance boundaries are ignored
Yeah.
because it's justified.
Yes.
Anything goes,
Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
which can often accelerate
Yeah.
the problem,
Yeah.
right?
And it
Exacerbate.
often has other factors in it too. It's, I guess, to anxious people, when we need something emotionally,
Mhm.
we're going to do anything and everything we can to get that thing,
Mhm.
regardless of the consequences. Or even if we know the consequences are going to be, okay, Gabriel will be angry with me,
Yes.
I'm willing to take that risk
Mhm.
because I need this right now. So
Like
I will risk him getting angry because I want what I want, or because I really need something right now.
right.
Yeah.
Like that one time I
Yes.
said, "Don't come over tonight,"
Yes.
and you came over
Yes.
anyway.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was angry.
You were angry, and I knew you were going to be angry.
I found you
Yeah.
playing video games on
I
TV.
don't remember doing that, but
Yeah,
I just let myself.
yeah.
But I didn't, I just was crashing on your couch.
Yeah, no, totally. But
Yeah, I did let
my
myself in.
boundary, I definitely
Yeah.
felt like my boundaries were
Yeah.
violated, right?
A good way to understand this mechanism is if you get the broader picture,
Mhm.
which often is our own personal struggles. Because as an anxious, like any person, right, we have our problems. And I think what differentiates anxious people from avoidance is that avoidants try to handle their problems by themselves,
Mhm.
versus anxious people make their problems other people's problems more. But
Mhm.
we're also more ready to just ask for help or cry for help. When it's, when it's balanced, it can be a good thing. When it's not balanced, it's not a good thing. But in that one time when I came over after you told me not to,
Mhm.
I had a fight with my roommate. So I really couldn't go home. I was so angry with her and I just didn't want to see her. I went all the way to the door and,
Mhm.
and I was like, I can't, I cannot interact with her right now. I can't do this. And I had a fight with my family, so I couldn't go to them either. So I was like,
That was your last option.
yeah, it's like everywhere I go, there's going to be conflict.
Mhm.
Which conflict do I choose?
Mhm.
And I
I was the
chose
lucky winner.
you were the lucky winner
Mhm.
because I felt like you were the most understanding, or easiest to then like make it right.
Manipulate. Yeah, I see how it is. But from the avoidant perspective,
Hmm.
right? You cross the boundary.
Hmm.
Um,
You said
I'm
no, and I did
angry.
it
Yeah,
anyway. Yeah,
I'm angry.
yeah,
And then as an anxious person, how you can make it right
yes,
so that you can ultimately get away with it,
yes, yeah,
right?
yeah. Then you
So,
make it up to them. Yeah,
yeah,
like I don't know how I did it, but if I did
yeah. Well, you did it well.
it, I
And I
did it well
think,
enough so that we ended up snuggling.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I went from angry to understanding and not angry,
Yeah,
right?
you were still angry. You were angry at me for a year and a half after this. You
A
kept on
year and a
bringing it up.
half?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Jesus.
yeah.
Okay. Well, water's under the bridge now. But what I wanted to say was, I think when anxious people do that, when they use their seductive nature, their ways of making it right after crossing a boundary,
Hmm.
they can do that.
Yeah,
They can do that once, they can do that twice.
yeah.
I think the danger is when anxious people think that because they're getting away with it in the moment,
Hmm.
there's no long-term consequence.
Yes,
They don't consider the build-up.
yes, yeah,
So something to keep in mind, if you happen to be doing so,
yeah,
that just because it's working in the moment, it doesn't mean there may not be far-reaching
yeah,
consequences that can
yeah,
escalate to a
yeah.
breakup.
I generally didn't just show up at your place uninvited. It was one time. I think
Yeah,
if
yeah,
it
yeah,
became a
exactly.
habit,
Yeah,
it would have
exactly.
been a
Yeah.
big problem.
Yeah, or crossing
Yeah,
boundaries too much
yeah,
over and over
yeah,
in the
yeah.
same way. Which brings me to, I think avoidance can often have a blind spot
Uh-huh.
for anxious people crossing boundaries. Like they feel it somewhere,
Yeah.
but it's not. They don't see it very
Mm-hmm.
clearly.
Mm-hmm.
Do anxious people take advantage of that?
Mm-hmm. It's not.
I think I am
It's
still blind
it
to
is.
it to an
It's much.
extent.
It's very much like with the avoidant power games.
Mm,
It's conscious, but not 100% conscious, or it's not so black and white.
mm-hmm.
But I think it is a way how I would try to control you,
Mm-hmm.
that you are blind to it, or that you feel obliged, or you feel responsible,
Guilty or
guilty.
something.
Yes, yes,
Yeah, it's true.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of our early fights was you were upset at me for not admitting what I wanted and just hinting at it.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
All the time.
all the time. And then you'd feel pressured.
Yeah.
And I didn't straight up ask, and I had to learn to straight up ask.
Yeah.
It's also this thing where you just,
So help any avoidant viewers understand what is this thing? What
what
that
is this thing?
Yeah, because I think to avoidance it's very mystical, it's not clear. It's a blind spot. They
Mm-hmm.
don't see it, they don't understand it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How would you say this power
The power.
game
Uh-huh.
works?
Uh-huh. Well, the
Desperate.
power works that I would know. I know when you're going to say, like, how to get you to say yes, even if you say no.
I feel so blindsided.
and and the
You know, I'm glad we're having this conversation today.
and an example of this is when we, for like one area where I still do it a
Mhm.
lot, I guess, is with hiking, because I'm the person who takes the longer routes, right? And you would object, and you'd be like, "Ooh, it's too far, or we'll be too tired, it's too much."
Think of the way back,
I
Karolina,
think yes,
which you don't do, but yes.
I am better, but yes, um, yes, but it's and it's valid, and you're right. It's good to have limits, and it's good to have boundaries. But at the same time, it's also good to push a little. In the hiking sense, you often end up having a lot of fun
Yeah,
and doing things that you wouldn't say with Etna. When we hiked Mount Etna, that was me pushing you to do something.
yeah, that I
And
normally would not have
yes,
likely done.
and it was a
I had a
super
blast. It
nice
was amazing.
experience.
Yeah, yeah, no.
So the way it works is like we know we can get away with it, and we know how to sell it.
Hmm.
It's like, and also in our head, it's not that the avoidant, like that you or an avoidant is opposed to something, strictly opposed to something.
There's a gray
There
middle
is like an
zone.
area where maybe they just need a little push, maybe they just need a little encouragement,
Hmm.
and they'll be happy.
Hmm.
And of course, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because they're not always happy. And if you do it too much, it breaks things.
Yeah,
You could feel forced
yeah,
to go on another hiking trip with me, right? And then you're just tagging along because you felt like you had to,
yeah.
and it makes it not fun. So it needs to be applied with caution. And I think it's something I also needed to learn, how
Mm,
to apply it with caution, and how to also accept that sometimes you will say no,
mm,
and I will not get what I want.
mm.
And that's tough, you know?
That's tough. You're
Yeah.
used to always getting what you want.
No, I mean, I don't know.
I think to illustrate that with a client story,
Hmm.
in a more extreme case, there was a couple that got along really well. Everything was magic. They had a blast together, and one of them was the anxiously attached was an extremely active person
Hmm.
and traveling the whole time, always
Hmm.
going on adventures or business trips. And the avoidant partner did this with them for a year or a bit more and was just going along with everything. Normally, they would be a more stay at home kind of
Hmm.
person and not such an extravagant traveler.
Hmm.
And a year and a half ish after, it was the avoidant that broke up and
Hmm.
said, we're too different, right? This isn't my lifestyle. I like my peace and quiet, this and that. And I think this was very much a case of the anxious person actively pushing the avoidant out of their comfort zone too much. It compounded over time. And there was a sudden, seemingly out of the blue, right? Because from the anxious side, it might seem like everything's fine.
great.
Breakup,
And it's like we don't want to accept the limit, so we pretend it's not there. I think that's like the
Okay.
way to explain it.
Yeah.
But we
Well,
do know it's there. It's just we don't want it to be there.
okay. So
we're gonna act as though it's not there.
So why is it so important that that boundary is not there? Like, what happens if it is there and it has to be accepted?
It is about not getting something that you want. It also might be about like you not caring about the things I care about, or maybe not caring about me as much as I wish that you did. Like, unpleasant.
So it's like pushing against this narrative, like maybe because it can actually be right that two people want different things. And if your needs are not being met for a longer period of time, you might need to play these games to have more of those needs met. But if you stopped, right, the reality would be like there is a necessity, right? It's not strictly, I guess it's not strictly bad, right? The avoidant partner also benefits.
Also does need to be pushed. Much like I needed to be pushed about other things. Like we do need we keep each other in check. But if it goes out of balance, or if one person has all the control. And it does happen. That one has all the control. And whether it's avoidant just playing extreme power games, or the anxious person just pushing and pushing and pushing, and making the avoidant, for example, financially dependent as well, and then just planning their whole life for them.
I've seen those stories too.
Then it backfires. It becomes too much when it can be a healthy amount of pushing, but it can be unhealthy amount of pushing. And I think anxious people often do know that we're pushing too much. And it is a selfish thing to do. We are just pushing for what we want.
So what helped you find that balance?
I had to learn to accept not getting what I wanted from you, because you have this ideal image. When you fall in love, this person is everything you want them to be. And in these moments when you have a boundary, or when you don't want to do something, or when you have a different interest, it puts that into question. It's like, oh, he's not. You were supposed to be perfect.
You were the one.
Yeah, you were the one. Does this make you not the one?
Yeah, you're just human.
It's like
you have flaws and limits.
You're not gonna make me happy.
Well, that explains the desperation. Right?
Because then you want it not to be true.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because a lot's at stake. If this person is suddenly not the one, the perfect partner, and especially if it's over a prolonged period of time, right? Longer relationships, then there's even more at stake. But it sounds like you went through that. How did you come to accept that I was
that you had boundaries?
That I had, well, I think, limits
and
too.
that sometimes I had to let go of what I wanted. It's a very good question. And it was a very hard lesson to learn, but also a very valuable one, actually. And the irony is, when you give up, and when you stop pushing, and when you accept it, and you let go of that thing that you want, you end up getting it. So it was through that experiment that I had to do many times. I'd want to go hiking somewhere. You wouldn't want to go. Or I'd want to do something. You wouldn't want to go. And I'd be like, okay, fine. Let's just sit at home and game. And you'd be like, no, okay, let's go. I'll come. when I stopped pushing,
When you respected my boundaries?
was it when I, yeah.
And this is, I have to add, a
Yeah.
big part
Of the whole
in the
dynamic. Yeah. Yeah.
is that avoidants also push back and
Yeah.
are distant and everything.
Because
To make the point
it's
that I've had
punishment.
yes, I had
I
a
know.
boundary and you didn't respect it.
Yeah.
And the more the anxious keeps pushing
Yeah.
for what they want,
Yeah.
the harder the boundary can
Yeah.
be.
Yeah.
Can
So I
escalate.
had to make that experience like 10 times, 15 times
Mm,
of like, when I give up, I actually get what I want, to rewire my brain to not push,
yeah,
and that I don't have to force you,
yeah.
that we
But
do actually want similar things.
it's both,
It's
right? You
both.
need
Yeah.
the pushing
Yeah.
and the
Sometimes you need to
understanding.
push, and other
Yeah,
times,
yeah. It's not to say,
yeah.
because we have some clients we work with are on this endlessly understanding
Yes,
nature,
endlessly giving.
right? Anxious people that are
You don't
just,
get anything.
yeah. If
You
they're,
just get exploited.
yeah, endlessly
Yeah.
understanding, endlessly.
Yeah.
Let's talk about them for a bit, because I think that's a bit of the
Yeah.
other type
Yeah.
of anxious
Yeah.
attachment
Yeah.
that we see. How would you describe them?
The endlessly giving ones?
Yeah, and
Oh,
what
they're endlessly
happens?
pushy.
They're endlessly pushy too.
Yes. I find the endlessly giving ones are the most pushy
No, pray tell.
because it's the ultimate guilt trip
Okay.
when you're giving and giving and giving.
So there is an
So it's like,
expectation.
yes, of course there's an expectation. There's always an expectation. And they often take a lot of charge and end up imposing a lot because they want something. Being giving is a way of covertly getting what you want.
Mm-hmm.
You're, you know,
Hoping
you're
the other
trying to
will.
create that outcome. For example, you say, "Oh, I want to spend time together." With guys, what I saw they do is like they offer to help out with something.
Mm.
Like, "Oh, you need help in the house, I'll come and fix it for you." But the actually, I did that as well. Totally did that. Yeah, I built your furniture.
You helped
Yeah,
build my furniture.
I did.
I am
But
perfectly capable of building furniture
I
for
helped.
myself.
I helped your sister build furniture.
It's true, actually. So it
And
wasn't just me,
I
see?
wanted to spend time with you. And but I didn't want to be like, hey, do you want to do something?
Mm.
And we just, I think, hang out the day before. And then my friend was helping your sister to build her wardrobe.
Okay.
It was really complicated.
Mm.
They were struggling. She texted me, hey, do you want to come and help? And I was like, yeah, sure. But I did it not because I wanted to help your sister or build a wardrobe. I did it because it was I'll get to spend time with Gabriel, and we'll see each other.
Sneaky.
So yeah, so it's this like sneaky game of something that looks like it's a favor to you,
Mm.
when in reality it's a favor to myself because I'm doing the things that help me get what I want.
Mm. So the giving anxious people have a different playbook, but it's ultimately the same
It's the
principle.
same people.
They're just trying to get it's the same people, in fact. Okay. So they're just trying to get their
It's the
needs met.
degrees, yeah.
It's
And
degrees.
the most giving ones are just basically the most pushy ones in a sense as well. But not to say that all the giving is just purely selfish, because it's not. And they are genuinely caring.
Yeah, yeah, of
And it
course.
is, even with the wardrobe, it was hard.
Yeah.
It wasn't an IKEA one, it was a different one. It was really complicated.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
remember. It was a nightmare.
But like the anxious people that are endlessly giving often don't notice that they are overextending themselves as well. They also do it because they feel responsible for the avoidant and they want to take care of them.
Mm.
They see that like the avoidant is, for example, sad or lonely, and they want to fix it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And the selfish motivation in it is, okay, then they'll be available for a relationship.
Yeah.
But there's also the genuine concern and just caring nature and giving nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not to be discarded, because I think,
Yeah.
it's something that avoidants take for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big part of what makes anxious people like part of their appeal.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the nurturing
Yeah.
quality, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Caretaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That avoidants feel drawn to and
Yeah.
safe with,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
where they have a sense of believing they're in control. Because so anxious people control in one way,
Mm-hmm.
avoidance control in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
Who is more controlling?
It depends on the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're pretty balanced, and I think that's why it works.
Mm.
And whenever there are times when you're more controlling, we're not gonna be happy. And I'm not gonna be happy. And when there are times when I'm too controlling, you're not gonna be happy. And the times in our relationship when I was too controlling, it often had to do with external circumstances.
Mm.
When I was just very stressed on my own and very panicked on my own, and I'd become more clingy, more controlling,
Mm.
more desperate, more anxious.
Yeah.
That was the challenge. And for you, I think there were times when you were more controlling, was more when for you it's more the depression and like more
Mm.
isolation. And that's when you actually become more controlling and more stern and
Mm-hmm.
unavailable. Like that's
Okay. So how would you say you or we found that balance, right? Because it's about the balance and the power dynamic.
Mhm.
What what led to that balance
Conflict
and conflict?
on both sides.
Mm.
You confronting me about things, me confronting you about things. And it was with the time when I came over. Partially the what fine I kept on explaining myself. I kept on explaining my point of view. I was like, I had a fight with my roommate, I had a fight with my dad.
Mm.
I needed to, and you were just endlessly angry about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I said to you, I knew you were going to be angry. I knew you said no,
Mm-hmm.
and I risked it anyway. Like until I admitted that I purposely overrode your boundary,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that you could let it go.
Yeah.
And I think it was a big part in what
That
helped us
was
find
that
a balance.
year and a half later, yeah.
Something like that. That's how long I was just explaining myself. And this
Mm-hmm.
is something that everybody falls into. You're no better. But yeah, that's how long it took me.
So in a way, it's anxious people play the power games, avoidant play their own power games.
Yeah.
And until both sides admit to playing those power
Yes.
games and are transparent about them,
Yeah.
it just
It
it
escalates.
escalates.
Yeah. Yeah. But when I say, okay, I am desperate, I am just overriding your boundaries, then you can ask me why.
Yeah, I'm afraid, or
Yes.
and that definitely creates more space on my
Yeah.
side.
And then it's suddenly not about you,
Yes.
but it's clear that it's my own needs, right? And I'm being the unreasonable ones.
Yeah.
Because the narrative in anxious person's head is like something's wrong with the avoidant because they're distant.
Yeah.
No, something's wrong with me. And I'm the insecure one. I'm the one who's exaggerating, or I'm the one who's, in emotional need right now
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
is desperate. And,
Yeah.
yeah.
And both sides can also be triggered.
Yeah.
Right. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily just on the
Yeah.
anxious or the
Yeah.
avoidant.
Yeah.
And that's when it becomes extra complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. When you're both triggered, then
Yeah.
one
Okay.
person has to get untriggered.
Yeah. And that's for
And
another
that's for another
podcast.
time.
Yeah. So in summary, both anxious people and avoidants play power games. In order to overcome those power games or overcome the conflicts that they produce,
Mhm.
they need to be more transparent about them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, both sides are essentially locked in their own version of suffering, where the anxious person feels like their needs are not being met, they're not being taken seriously, they're desperate,
Yes. Yeah.
and the avoidant person feels like their boundaries are being endlessly overridden
Yeah.
and can't change it,
Yeah.
other than maybe breaking up or becoming more
distance
distant.
themselves.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we hope that gave you more insight into anxious people's headspace and what maybe you as an anxious person or even as an avoidant partner can do to change, to
Yeah.
improve the
And also
relationship.
that it's okay that we override boundaries sometimes. Everybody does. Avoidants are no better. They do it differently.
Differently.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
Sure.
also that it needs to be controlled. Like you can't just let go. You can't just,
You
go
can't just
with
let go of what?
like let go of control and just blindly go for what you
Yes.
want.
You
Yeah.
cannot just blindly trust either.
Yeah.
Right? That the
Yeah.
other person is this perfect
Yeah.
person.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting
Yeah.
topic to explore as
Yeah. Yeah.
well. The one.
The one, yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. And
And
how
and the
the
downfall of the one.
conflicts that emerge from that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Well, thank you for
guys.
listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening or watching if you're on YouTube. And we'll catch you in the next episode.
See you soon.